How does a house containing 7 functioning human beings completely sleep through a 6-month-old infant being systematically attacked by rodents? Today, we are examining a case out of Evansville, Indiana, that forces us to stare directly into the terrifying psychology of normalization. We are going to unpack how the human brain can adapt to the absolute worst squalor imaginable, adjusting its baseline day by day until an entirely preventable tragedy becomes an inevitable reality. Welcome, everyone, to another rigorous and deeply analytical deep dive here on Off the Record. We are profoundly grateful to have you joining us at the table today as we examine one of the darkest, most complicated corners of the human experience.
Precisely. And before we begin dissecting today's incredibly dense and sobering material, it is absolutely essential that we establish the foundation of our physical environment. As always, we have our visionary director, Ryan Thomas, in the booth. Ryan curates not only the grueling source material we analyze for you, but also the physical atmosphere in the studio to match the psychological weight of the topic.
And what a remarkably heavy pairing Ryan has provided for us tonight. To ground us, we are consuming a thick, almost impossibly dark root vegetable and venison stew. It is a meal that forces you to slow down, to chew methodically, and to really feel the sheer mass of it sitting in your stomach. And alongside it, an incredibly potent, high-proof, unfiltered Islay Scotch. It was practically black in the glass, reeking of peat and smoke.
It burns on the way down in a way that demands your full attention. And that is exactly what Ryan intended, because our mission today on Off the Record requires absolute unflinching focus. We are examining a harrowing, almost unthinkably grim case of extreme child neglect. We are going to forensically unpack the systemic failures, the biological realities of urban infestations, and the domestic collapse that allowed a 6-month-old child to suffer a near-fatal event inside his own home.
Right. And we must be clear with you, the listener. While the visceral details of this case, which we've compiled from the Boston 25 News Desk and local Evansville affiliates, are deeply disturbing, turning away from the horror accomplishes absolutely nothing. Analyzing these details is crucial if we ever hope to understand the stark realities of domestic endangerment. I mean, if we do not look at the mechanics of how a family fails, we cannot fix the systems designed to protect the vulnerable.
Well stated. This is not about sensationalism. This is about structural collapse. We are looking at an environment where the basic human instinct to protect the most vulnerable simply evaporated. We must approach this with clinical precision to understand the why and the how of such an egregious failure of guardianship.
Let's bring you right into the inciting incident. We need to look at the timeline. It's the morning of September 13th, 2023. At roughly 6:30 a.m., the Evansville Police Department receives a call from David Schoenbaum. He is the father of this 6-month-old infant. Now, according to the official records, he tells dispatch that his son is covered in blood, and he makes a specific, horrifying note that it looked like the baby's fingers had been chewed.
Stop right there, and let's analyze the psychology and the immediate behavioral response of that specific moment. Put yourself in that position. You wake up, you walk into your child's room, and you discover a scene of absolute incomprehensible carnage. The standard psychological protocol for a functioning human being is immediate, frantic contact with emergency medical services. Your brain goes into a pure adrenaline-fueled survival state on behalf of your offspring. You don't pause, you don't try to alter the scene. But the police report explicitly notes that David, with the help of the infant's aunt, Delana Thurman, actually took the child to the bathroom first to try and wash off the blood.
But wait, let me push back on that for a second. If you walk into a room and your child is covered in a substance, isn't there an initial phase of cognitive dissonance? Like your brain simply cannot process what it is seeing, so it defaults to a mundane task, like cleaning. Or do you think this was the deliberate, calculated move to sanitize the crime scene? Because attempting a bathroom cleanup before the medical triage truly begins is incredibly striking.
That is the core debate right there. Is it shock or is it culpability? In states of extreme trauma, the human brain can certainly fracture and default to routine. But we have to look at the context of this specific household, which we will detail shortly. When a home is already under the scrutiny of state agencies, the adults are often hyper-aware of how a scene will look to authorities. Washing the baby isn't just about cleaning a wound, it's potentially an immediate subconscious recognition of profound negligence. They are trying to wash away the evidence of their own failure before the flashing lights arrive.
Which is ultimately futile, because despite the cleanup attempt, the medical reality, once the child is finally stabilized by paramedics and transported to a hospital in Indianapolis, is just staggering. Let's break down the clinical facts derived from those hospital reports.
What's fascinating here, in the most macabre sense of the word, is the specific localization of the trauma. We are talking about over 50 individual bite marks localized heavily to the child's face, specifically the forehead, the cheek, and the nose.
And we have to ask why the face. To understand this, you have to understand the biology and scavenging behavior of Rattus norvegicus, the common brown rat. Rats are opportunistic omnivores, but they are highly driven by the pursuit of moisture, salt, and easily accessible proteins. An infant's face, particularly around the eyes and nose, naturally secretes moisture and salts. The skin on the forehead and the bridge of the nose is incredibly thin, offering immediate access to the vascular system. The rats weren't just biting aggressively out of defense, they were actively feeding.
Exactly. And the horror compounds, when we look at the extremities, the reports detail catastrophic trauma to the child's hands. The gnawing on the infant's fingers was so severe, so sustained, that it resulted in partial amputations.
Amputation. I want you, the listener, to let that word ring in the air for a moment. A 6-month-old child needing amputations because of rodent predation in a suburban home in America in 2023. We're not talking about a developing nation without infrastructure. We're talking about Evansville, Indiana.
Furthermore, the physicians documented this as a near-fatal event. The blood loss was so catastrophic that this tiny infant required active blood transfusions just to stay alive. And to put that into a physiological perspective, an average 6-month-old baby only has about 400 to 500 milliliters of blood in their entire body. Yeah, that is roughly the volume of a standard bottle of water. Losing even a fraction of that triggers hypovolemic shock. The child's heart rate skyrockets, their blood pressure plummets, their organs begin to fail as the body desperately shunts whatever oxygenated blood is left to the brain. This baby was literally drained to the absolute brink of death.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this brings us to the core analytical tension of the entire case. The question that absolutely defies basic acoustic physics and human physiology. How, in the name of all that is rational, does a child sustain 50 distinct, agonizing bites, resulting in amputations and near-fatal blood loss without waking an entire house?
It is the defining paradox of the case.
I am genuinely struggling to comprehend the acoustics of this scenario. You have a standard residential house containing 7 people. There are multiple adults present in adjacent rooms. The parents' official excuse, as relayed by the Evansville police, was simply that they did not hear the child cry.
Which, from a purely scientific standpoint, strains credulity past the breaking point. Let's examine the statement from Sergeant Anna Gray of the Evansville Police Department. She stated to the press, and I quote, "It's kind of one of those situations where they were just not paying attention. Just not paying attention. We are not talking about missing a subtle television cue. We are talking about the piercing, evolutionary distress signal of an infant."
Right. The acoustic physics of a baby's cry are literally engineered by millions of years of evolution to be impossible to ignore. A baby's scream can easily hit 110 to 120 decibels. That is the equivalent of an ambulance siren or a rock concert directly in your ear. Even if you factor in the inverse square law of sound propagation, say the cry has to travel through a hollow core door and drywall, the decibel level reaching the parent's bedroom would still be around 60 to 70 decibels. That's like having a loud alarm clock going off 2 feet from your head.
And it's not just the volume, it's the frequency. Human hearing is most sensitive to frequencies between 2,000 and 4,000 hertz. Guess what frequency band a baby's distress cry primarily occupies? Exactly that range. Our brains are biologically hardwired to snap out of slow-wave sleep the second that specific auditory frequency hits our auditory cortex. For a biological parent to sleep through that requires a profound, almost pathological level of sensory gating or chemical dissociation.
Or we have to consider the deeply unsettling alternative. An environment so fundamentally chaotic, so constantly flooded with noise, distress, and trauma, that the sound of a child's extreme suffering has literally become ambient noise to them. The baseline of chaos was so high that a scream for survival didn't register as an anomaly. Excuse me, I need to take a sip of this scotch. Ryan, this is incredibly heavy. I can feel the weight of this just coating my throat.
Yes, the proof on this islet is incredibly aggressive. It's exactly what is required to cut through the absolute darkness of this material. And honestly, Ryan Thomas is an absolute sick fuck for making us read this.
I mean, we did agree to do the show.
No, I mean that as the highest possible aggressive praise. It is a brilliant, hard-hitting topic, but to make us sit here in this perfectly climate-controlled studio and visualize a baby being eaten in the dark, it takes a certain kind of sociopathic genius to direct this show. He knows exactly how to push us to our psychological limits.
It really does. I think about the biology of the bite itself. A rat's incisors never stop growing, so they have to constantly chew to file them down. The enamel on a rat's teeth is harder than iron on the Mohs hardness scale. That's how they chew through cinder block and copper wire. And then I think about that little face. The areas where the infant skin is thinnest, where the child is most vulnerable. It just instills this deep existential sadness in me. We sit here, analyzing it academically, sipping top-shelf liquor, but out there in the real world, that baby was just lying there alone. It makes you question the underlying fabric of community, doesn't it?
It absolutely forces you to look at the structural decay of the modern household, because this did not happen in a vacuum. Let's shift our focus and break down the environmental collapse of this specific residence. The living situation was an absolute powder keg of neglect, biologically and sociologically, just waiting to ignite.
Okay, set the scene for us. Who is actually living inside this structure?
You have David and Angel Schoenbaum, the parents of the victim. You have their 3 children, including the infant. Then you introduce Angel's sister, Delana Thurman, and her 2 children. You have 7 distinct human beings crammed into one single-family residential footprint that was clearly significantly overwhelmed.
7 people. Think about the logistics of that for a second. The sheer volume of daily biological waste generated by 7 mammalian bodies. The caloric intake requirements, the massive piles of laundry, the constantly overflowing trash, the ambient noise. That kind of dense, multifamily ecosystem requires incredibly stringent, disciplined management just to maintain baseline hygienic standards. It requires military-level chore charts and constant vigilance, and instead, what the police found was a complete surrender to entropy.
Total structural surrender. And we have to look at the Terminix timeline, because this infestation was not a sudden freak migration of wildlife. It wasn't a sudden cold snap driving a few mice indoors. This was a protracted systemic siege.
Walk us through that timeline, because it completely obliterates any defense of ignorance the adults might try to claim.
According to David Schoenbaum's own admission to the detectives, the infestation began in March of 2023. The incident happened in mid-September. We are talking about a full 6-month period of escalating rodent occupation. They called Terminix at some point. They were provided with standard traps and bait boxes by the professionals. And David claimed on the official record that he was catching 4 rats a night.
Here's where it gets really interesting, mathematically speaking. 4 rats a night. I want you to do the exponential math on that. The gestation period for a female brown rat is only 21 to 23 days. She can have a litter of up to 14 pups at a time. Those pups reach sexual maturity in 5 weeks. If you are physically catching 4 rats every single night consistently, you are not making a dent in the population. You are merely harvesting the excess.
Precisely. You're just skimming the top off a boiling pot.
It means you have hundreds of rats actively circulating through your living space over a 6-month period. You have an established colony living in the walls, the floorboards, the furniture. You are effectively living inside a nest. Furthermore, standard snap traps and bait boxes often fail in severe infestations because rats are neophobic. They are incredibly cautious of new objects in their environment. If one rat gets snapped by a trap, the others observe it and learn to avoid that object. They learn to avoid the bait. So, catching 4 a night means the colony was so massively overpopulated that the desperate, lower-rung rats were taking fatal risks just to eat.
That biological context is horrifying and absolutely crucial. And here's the aha moment of the entire investigative file. This is the detail that absolutely shatters the facade. Let's look at Delana Thurman, the aunt. On September 5th, just 8 days before the near-fatal attack, she has a formal conversation with Child Services. And she actually says on the official record that the home had a normal amount of mice for their area.
A normal amount of mice.
A normal amount, I'm sorry, the scotch is hitting my bloodstream fast, but a normal amount of mice?
It's not funny, but the absurdity of it is staggering.
What is the baseline metric for a normal amount of mice in the room where your infant sleeps? Is it 3? Is it 12? Do they have a tiny little census bureau keeping track of the quota? A normal amount of mice.
It speaks to a completely warped normalization of squalor. We talked about cognitive dissonance earlier. She is telling state authorities with a perfectly straight face that having a baseline population of rodents running over your children is just a geographic reality of living in Evansville.
A normal amount of mice. I can't get over it. The more I say it, the crazier it sounds. It's such an absurd, almost Shakespearean defense. Oh, officer, pay no mind to the vermin. It's merely the standard state-sanctioned quota of rodents. It's ridiculous. You know, you're a good boy for pointing out the timeline discrepancy there, by the way, because it gets even darker when you look at the older children in the house.
Right, the timeline discrepancy. Because the older children, Delena's oldest and the Skonabom's oldest, they actually went to a teacher. They told an educator in their school system that their toes were being bitten by mice while they slept. Let's unpack the sociology of that. The children recognized the abnormality. The children, whose brains are not yet fully developed, knew that being eaten in your sleep is not a normal amount of nature. They tried to blow the whistle to a mandatory reporter, and Delana explicitly denied it to child services. She told them she doubted the marks on the kids' feet were from mice.
You're a very good girl for tracking that narrative thread. The children knew. The children were the only rational actors in that entire absolute fuck of a house. They were the only ones trying to interface with reality.
Why am I getting so emotional about this? This scotch is really, it's very warm. It's burning my chest in a weird way, but it just makes me think about failure, you know, the creeping, quiet failure of a messy house.
We need to stay focused on the Evansville case. Let's look at the CPS data.
No, I'm projecting. I know I'm projecting, but listen to me for a second.
Oh.
Think about how clutter works in your own life. Sometimes my apartment gets messy. Not rats, obviously not rats, thank God. But the laundry piles up in the corner, the dishes sit in the sink for 2 days, 3 days. You get depressed, you get overwhelmed with work, and suddenly you look around and you just feel this overwhelming sense of personal failure.
Yeah.
Like you can't even maintain your own basic environment. And then people come over. They walk in, they see the mess, and you see the look in their eyes. They judge you, and then they leave. And you're just standing there in your own filth.
Hey, take a breath. We're analyzing the text. We're keeping it analytical.
I know, I'm sorry. It's just the concept of a messy house is so fraught. It's so deeply tied to our worth as adults. You feel like you're drowning in your own life, and nobody throws you a lifeline. They just tell you to clean up. Anyway, before we continue this deep dive, I need to look right into the camera. Listen to me. If you are listening to this, you need to go to YouTube right now. I don't care what you're doing. Search for @HAM-OTR. That is the official channel for Off the Record. You need to like and subscribe so we can keep doing this. If you don't like and subscribe, we can't keep uncovering these truths. We're out here bearing witness to the darkness, and we need your support. @HAM-OTR.
Do it. Hold on. Ryan is buzzing in from the booth. Ryan, what MARP? You want to do it right now. We are in the middle of a profound psychological breakdown of child neglect, Ryan.
Oh, God. Is he making us do the vocal exercise?
Yes, he is. What a cunt.
You can't call the director that.
I just did. Seriously, Ryan, you're a cunt for making us do this right now. You're breaking the flow of a highly academic broadcast just to assert dominance over us. Fine. You want the exercise. Here is your precious exercise. Ready? Liam Neeson's niece, Lisa Neeson, recently leased a really nice Nissan.
Liam Neeson's niece, Lisa Neeson, recently leased a really nice Nissan.
There. Are you happy, Ryan? God, he's so annoying. But look at him through the glass. Look at him sitting in there with his little headphones. The studio lighting is hitting him perfectly from above. His forearms are just, they look so incredibly thick right now, resting on that mixing board. And you notice how thick his forearms are? I swear to God, I would let that man completely ruin my life. I really would. I would let him absolutely destroy my credit score, alienate me from my family, and leave me in a ditch. It's a deeply inappropriate desire, I know it is, but I'm just being honest with the listener. We're all friends here on Off the Record. Transparency is key to journalism.
Let's try to bring it back to the text. Okay, please. I'm drinking heavily now, and my lips feel a little fuzzy, but I just want to focus on the systemic failure. We need to look at the Child Protective Services element, because the tragedy of this case is that this family was not operating in the shadows. They weren't off the grid. They were already on the state's radar.
That is the most damning part of the entire file. Let's look at the legal and bureaucratic mechanisms of CPS. The Schoenebaums had been reported to child services previously because of an injury to one of the other children. They were actively under the agency services leading up to the September attack.
Which means there were state-mandated case managers physically walking through that front door. Professionals trained, supposedly, to identify risk on a safety assessment matrix. Let's explain how that works for the listener. When a caseworker enters a home, they don't just look around and vibe it out. They use a highly structured rubric. They assess immediate physical dangers, environmental hazards, the presence of adequate food, the structural integrity of the home. They have to weigh the imminent danger to the child against the incredible legal hurdle of removing a child from their biological parents. The system is fundamentally designed around the Adoption and Safe Families Act, which heavily prioritizes family reunification and preservation over immediate permanent removal.
Which creates a horrifying gray area. And let's look at what those caseworkers actually wrote in their official notes when they assessed this house of horrors. They noted that the house was cluttered, They noted there was trash sitting out. They literally documented animal feces on the floor. Animal feces on the floor, where an infant is learning to crawl. But, and this is the absolute kicker, the detail that makes me want to scream, the follow-up visits noted that the home was, quote, slowly improving.
Slowly improving.
Yes. Think about the profound metaphysical weight of that phrase. Think about the absolute cosmic joke of it. Slowly improving. Isn't that just the human condition in a nutshell? We are all just slowly improving in a house full of shit, aren't we?
Oh my God.
What?
That is the most earth-shattering philosophical breakthrough I have ever heard on this show.
Wait, say it again?
I say we are all just slowly improving in a house full of shit.
You are so right. You are so profoundly right. That's it. That's everything. That explains the whole world right now. It really does. Think about it. Society, the economy, our personal relationships. There is literal systemic feces on the floor everywhere you look. The ice caps are melting. Inflation is out of control. People are terrible to each other. But hey, we bought a new rug for the living room, so we're slowly improving. It's a profound metaphor for modern existence. The caseworkers weren't just writing about the Skonebaum house. They were writing a thesis on humanity.
It hurts how true that is. It literally aches in my chest. Because I thought I was slowly improving. You know, after my last breakup, they sat me down and they said I was too chaotic, that I couldn't maintain a stable emotional environment. I was too needy. So I started going to therapy. I started doing my dishes immediately after eating. I bought a leather-bound planner. I color-coded my weeks. I was slowly improving. But the shit was still on the floor.
Yeah.
The fundamental brokenness of my personality was still there, lurking in the baseboards like a rat. And I'm just equating my own pathetic sadness to this tragic Evansville home. And I know I shouldn't, but the scotch is making everything connect in my brain like a giant spider web.
Oh, you little slut, stop crying.
I'm not a slut. I'm just lonely.
You're being a little slut for sympathy right now, and I love you for it, you beautiful bitch, but you need to pull it together. Look at this absolute fuck of a situation we are analyzing. Look at the macro-level disaster. The structural integrity of the entire American child welfare system is collapsing under the weight of underfunding and burnout. And you're crying about a color-coded planner. Although, honestly, if Ryan Thomas came over the intercom right now and told me I was slowly improving, I'd probably swoon. I would melt out of this chair. I just want him to treat me like literal trash. I want him to look at me the way Terminix looks at an Evansville rat infestation. Eradicate me, Ryan.
Your vocabulary is degrading completely. We are supposed to be polished academics on this show. We are supposed to be dissecting the nuanced failures of domestic spaces.
Oh, whatever. The nuance is dead. These parents were absolute shitheads. The whole system is a giant pile of shit. It's just cock and shit all the way down, baby. We sit here, we peel back the layers of domestic endangerment week after week on Off the Record, and guess what we find inside? More shit. It's a Matryoshka doll made of feces.
Okay, wait. Hang on. I need a reset. We need a professional reset to save the structural integrity of this deep dive. Let me pour another splash of this eye. Okay, let me summarize the charges. Let's look at the aftermath, because the justice system did eventually step in, with David Schoenbaum, Angel Schoenbaum, and Delana Thurman, the trifecta of negligence. They are all facing multiple severe child neglect charges. The state brought the hammer down. But wait, what was I saying before the planner thing?
You were summarizing the charges, you beautiful disaster. You were doing great.
Right, the charges. But wait, I just had a thought. Because earlier we said the physics of sound meant they had to hear the baby cry, right?
Right.
110 decibels. But what if, think about this analytically, what if they did hear the baby cry, but they just thought it was a TV show?
What?
Hear me out. Like maybe they had the TV up really, really loud in the living room, and they thought the screaming was coming from an HBO drama. Or like Cocomelon or something, because kids scream on TV all the time. Maybe they just thought it was the television.
That makes zero fucking sense. Are you listening to the words falling out of your mouth?
I'm trying to view it from all angles.
You're accidentally contradicting the entire premise we established 40 minutes ago. Cocomelon doesn't sound like a biological infant getting its fingers chewed off by 50 actual rodents. HBO doesn't broadcast the sound of hypovolemic shock. What are you even talking about?
My tongue is numb. The venison stew is fighting the scotch in my stomach, and I'm just trying to find reasonable doubt. We have to be unbiased.
There is no reasonable doubt. They are shitheads. Look at the law enforcement toll. Look at the trauma inflicted on the people who had to clean up their mess. Look at Surgeon Anna Gray's quote to WFIE. She said it's really hard to see that, and sometimes it's really hard to maintain composure and be professional. Law enforcement officers, hardened veterans of the police force who see death every day, are losing their minds looking at this case. We are maintaining composure right now, Anna. We are in the studio, Anna, and we are maintaining our fucking composure.
Whoa, you knocked your glass over. The scotch is everywhere. It's on the notes.
Oh, shit. Oh,
Yeah.
fuck. The eye lays on the mixing board. It's seeping into the faders. I'm sorry. I just got so mad at Anna Gray for doubting our professionalism. I got defensive. I'm dabbing it with my sleeve.
I can't even care about the scotch right now. Let it spill. Who cares? Do you fully grasp that 5 children were removed from that custody? 5 innocent little souls yanked out of a house of horrors by the state, and now they were just floating in the foster care system. Think about the innocence of children. They don't know about systemic poverty. They don't know about Terminix contracts. They just want to play and be loved and eat snacks and have normal toes that aren't bitten by vermin in the middle of the night. I can't stop sobbing. It's just so profoundly unfair. It's a fundamentally broken universe.
Oh, come here, give me a hug. You're such a bad boy or bad girl, whichever you prefer. Right now in this moment, you're just a bad, beautiful person who cares way too much about the world. You care too much about the babies and the rats.
I care so much.
I know you do. We abandoned the strict microphone etiquette like an hour ago. I don't even care anymore. I'm holding you. Ryan is probably fuming in the booth right now, watching us hug. Are you fuming, Ryan? I bet you are. Your jawline looks so incredibly tight when you're angry. You look like a frustrated Roman emperor. I just want him to come in here, rip these headphones off my head, and forcefully escort me off the premises. Throw me into the alley, Ryan.
We are supposed to be analyzing the text. We have to finish the document. The final police report, they said they found discarded food and rodent footprints in the blood. Rodent footprints in the baby's blood. The little tiny paws tracking it across the linoleum. It's like a tiny, horrible painting of neglect. A macabre masterpiece.
It is. It's a dark, terrible canvas, and we've stared directly into it for an hour, and we are completely wasted.
Right.
I am so drunk I can barely hold my heavy head up. The venison stew is sitting my stomach like a lead weight, like a cannonball, and the Islay scotch has completely rewired my prefrontal cortex. I feel like I'm floating above my own body.
We need to wrap it up. We have to bring the ship into port. I have to remind you, the listener, you wonderful patient listener, that this has been a deep dive into the darkest corners of human negligence on Off the Record. We looked at the timeline. We looked at the acoustic physics of a baby's cry. We looked at the 50 bites, the Terminix failure, the systemic collapse of child services, the Adoption and Safe Families Act, and the absolute absurdity of a normal amount of mice. I know I'm slurring. My S's are very soft right now. But the summary, the ultimate takeaway, is that humanity failed that baby. And we are just here, drinking, trying to bear witness to it.
We bore witness like champions. We did incredible, rigorous academic work today. We cracked the code of the universe. But before we sign off, I need to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. A masterpiece of intellectual broadcast journalism for you to chew on while you go to sleep tonight. Listen to me closely. This is profound. If a rat bites you in the dark and nobody hears you cry, did the Terminix guy even really exist? Think about that, you beautiful hoe. Think about it.
I just can't even answer that.
Call me, Ryan. Literally anytime. Just break down the studio door and take me. Good night, everyone. Keep your houses clean. Do your dishes. We love you.